Hi, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. This video, our members will present about the methodology of law, deducing law from the text, which is the group member is me, Muhammad Amin Rashid Zamhari, and the second is Muhammad Aslam Maskadov bin Abdul Latif, and the last one is Siti Nur Farid Diana binti Ishaq. So, let me explain about the rules of interpretation. What is the rule of interpretation? The purpose of rule of interpretation is to deduce legal laws from the indication provided by the Quran or the Sunnah. It is vital that the language of the Quran and the Sunnah will be fully understood. To use these sources, the mujtahid must have a true understanding of the text word and their specific implication. In the methodology of usul fiqh, the ulama of usul include the classification of terms and their usage for this purpose. The laws governing the origin of words, their usage and classification are largely linguistic in nature, and as such, they are not part of the law or religion. However, they are helpful in interpreting the Sharia correctly. When the text itself is self-evident and obvious, the mujtahid will usually refrain from resorting to interpretation. The vast majority of fiqh, however, is made up of rules determined through interpretation and ijtihad. Ijtihad can take several forms, as will be mentioned later, and interpretation, which aims at the accurate understanding of the words and praise of a legal book, is a fundamental to all types of ijtihad. The purpose of interpretation is to deduce the lawgivers of any other person intention from his or her words and actions. The finding of something which is not self-evident is the primary goal of interpretation. Thus, in Islamic law, as in any other law, the goal of interpretation is to ascertain the lawgiver's intention with regard to what has been left unexpressed as a matter of necessary inference from the surrounding circumstance. So, next I will explain about the type of words and its implication. Words have been divided into numerous categories based on their clarity, scope, and ability to convey a certain meaning. The ulama of usul have categories work into two categories based on their conceptual clarity, which is clear and unclear terms. The major goal of this division is to determine if a word's meaning is made explicit or left vague and uncertain. The language, forms, and consequence of orders and prohibitions demonstrate the significance of this division. And the challenge of determining the precise meaning of a directive is uncertainly if the degree of clarity or ambiguity in which is it given can be determined. Words are also categorized into two main categories, which is a literal hakiki and metaphorical majazi, based on their actual use, such as whether they are used in their primary, secondary, literal, technical, or customer sense. Usul fiqh methodology dictates that instruction and prohibition should not be conveyed in metaphorical words because this would create confusion in their applicability. However, there are exceptions, such as when the metaphorical meaning of a word becomes prominent to the point that the literal or original meaning is no longer used. The language in which a legal regulation is delivered determines its strength to a significant extent. The ability to discriminate between the clear and the ambiguous as well as to determine the degrees of clarity and ambiguity in words. 8. the jurist in his efforts to resolve legal conflict. Some of the mujtahid's conclusion may be at the odds with other why he is deducing rules from prohibited why he is deducing rule from probability. So ijtihad therefore require not only an understanding of the legal terminology but also a process and rules for resolving instance of contradiction in its conclusion. That's all from me. Thank you.
The clear words first. The definitions of the clear words is the interpretation of words is unnecessary. It is because the word itself is self-contained and the word doesn't need extra evidence or extra sources to support that words because the meaning is already stated clearly. There are 4 types of words in a ranking which start with the list, namely Zahir, Nas, Mufassar and Muhkam. So we go to the Zahir. The Zahir, which is we call the manifest, a term with a clear meaning but is open to ta'wil, whereas the Nas has a clear meaning but that has clear meaning and the meaning is consistent and harmony in the context and there's not and is not open to ta'wil. For Mufassar, which is we call the unmistakable. Unmistakable means a word or text whole meaning is completely clear and no need to ta'wil but is open to abbreviations. Whereas for the last one, that the clearest is the muhkam, the obvious. The words and text have a clear meaning and unmistakable, and there is no need to open to ta'wil and abbreviations. So that's all for clear words. Next, we go to the unclear words. Unclear words. Unclear words, also known as al-alfaz or al-wadiha. The definitions of unclear words is a term that not conveying a clear meaning without any existence of further evidence that provided by lawgiver or mujtahid. There is 4 types of unclear words, which are kafi, mushkil, mujmal and mutashabih. First, we go to the kafi. Kafi refers to the words that has a basic meaning but partially unclear, and the ambiguity in kafi need to be clarified by the extraneous evidence. For the second is mushkil, difficult. A word that it refers to a word that is intrinsically ambiguous and can only be resolved via inquiry and ijtihad. The second one is mujmal, ambivalent. It refers to a term or text that is intrinsically ambiguous and provides no clue as to precise meaning. For the last one is mutashabih. Mutashabih refers to a word that the meaning is totally mystery. For example, we can find it in the Quran. When, if you notice, at some of the surah, at the beginning of some of the surah have words like alif, lam, mim, and yasin, and many more. So it shows that the words has a mystery meaning. So that's all for clear and unclear words. General and specific. First, we go general and specific. First, we go to the general and specific. General, also known as di'am. Di'am and general can be defined as the word that refer to a wide range of things and encompasses everything to which it pertains. General and diam also can be defined as terms with a single meanings that can be applied to a limitless number of people without any constraint or any limitations. To further understanding about the general, we go to the example of the arm. Here we have two examples. First, we take an example from the Quran verse 1 in Surah Al-As, which is the example for the word of insan, which is human beings. So the sentence is, verily the human being is in loss. Is in loss. So the second example is the command, which is, whoever enter this house, give him dirham. So as we can see from this both example, the application of the human being and whoever is general and includes every human being without any limitations, which is mean that this verse is to everyone that is called as a human being. So that's for general. Next, we go to the specific. So for the specific also known as the khas. The definitions for specific is referred to the words that it refers to the words that use when it used to a restricted numbers and encompasses everything to which it can apply, such as 1 or 2 or 100. So to support this, we can take it from statement that made or by Abdul Rahman. According to Abdul Rahman, he said a word of this kind may denote particular individuals such as Ahmad or Zaid, or an individual belonging to a certain species such as a horse or a bird, and an individual belonging to genus such as human being. So first, the specific is, like I said before, general is for general like human, but if for the specific terms, the human can be called as Ahmad, Siti, to specify that thing. And for the other example is the car. In general, we call it as car, but for the specific, the car has a name like Myvi, BMW, Mercedes, and others. So that's all for the general and specific.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And very good day. My name is Muhammad Aslam Maskadah bin Abdul Latif. First, I will be presenting my subtopic, which is absolute and qualified. The Arabic term for absolute is mutlaq and muqayyad for the qualified. The definition of mutlaq is there is no limit, unbound and detached. And why the definition for muqayyad is binding and limiting, or it can also mean that muqayyad shows the understanding that has certain limits in the form of words. Example of mutlaq is a word like a cat or a chair, where each of it is a generic noun that can apply to any cat or chair without any restriction or not specific enough. Mutlaq in the original state is unspecified and unqualified. When mutlaq is qualified by another word, it will become muqayyad. For example, mutlaq that being qualified from the word a book as a red book, or a cat as a big cat. Next, the example of mutlaq and muqayyad in the Al-Quran. We can see an example of mutlaq in Al-Quran in Surah Al-Maidah chapter 5 verse 92, where expiation, kafarah, of full-time oath is freeing a slave, fatahliru raqabatin. In this text, the comment is not limited to any kind of slave, and it can be whether a Muslim or non-Muslim slave. The next example is example of muqayyad. When look at another Quranic passage, for example, Surah Al-Nisa, chapter 5, verse 92, where the expiation of erroneous killing consists of freeing a Muslim slave. Fatahriru rakabatim muminatim. The difference in both texts were from the first text, which is conveyed in an absolute term, while the command in the second verse is qualified, where the slave to be released must be a Muslim. Next, if there are two texts on the same subject, where one is absolute and the other is qualified, but they are different with one another in their ruling and in their cause, or in both, then neither is qualified by the other, and each will work as its own. This is the view of the Hanafi and Maliki school, and the Shafi'i school agrees. Shafi'i believe that if the two text rule, hukum, are different but they have the same cause in common, then the mutlaq is qualified by the muqayyad. For example, by referring to the two Quranic verse on ablution, one of which is in address to the believer to wash your face and your hand, aydikum, up to the elbow. Surah Al-Madiyah, chapter 5, verse 7. Washing hand in this has been qualified by the following phrase to mention up to the elbow. The second Quranic provision is about tayammum. The Quran mentions, take a clean sand or earth and wipe your face and your hand. Surah Al-Nisa, chapter 4, verse 43. The word aydikum, your hand, occurs as a muqayyad in the first text, but it is a mutlaq in the second text. The two texts share the same cause, which is cleanliness for salah. There is a difference between the two rulings, where in the first ruling, it requires washing and then wiping the hand. But these differences have no consequences. The first ruling is muqayyad in regard to the area in which the hand need to be washed, while the second ruling is brought in absolute term. Therefore, the second ruling qualified by the first, and the muqayyad prevail. This means in tayammum too, one is required to wipe their hand out to the elbow. Next is literal and metaphorical. When a word is applied literally, it retains its original meaning, but when used in metaphorical sense, it is changed from the original meaning to the secondary meaning basis between the two meanings. Words are often used in their literal sense, and in legal language, this is the literal meaning that we trust the most. So, if a word is used simultaneously in these two senses, the literal meaning will prevail. For example, when a person says in his will that I bequeath my property to the memorizer of the Quran or to my offspring. Those who might have memorized the Quran but then forgotten will not be entitled. Similarly, offspring, aulad, mainly means son and daughter, not grandchildren. As for the application of aulad, grandchildren, is a metaphorical usage which is a secondary use of the original meaning. If there is an event where the word has both metaphorical and literal uses in it, and the metaphorical is firmly established and dominant, it may take prevail over the literal meaning. However, some of the ulama have an opposite view regarding the case where namely hakiki, which is literal, will dominate in any case. But according to the third perspective, both should be weighed equally. However, the first of the view represents the majority of views. For example, the word talaq, that literally means release or removal of restriction, izalah al-qaid, whether from ties such as marriage, slavery or ownership. But then again, since the juridical meaning of talaq means dissolution of marriage or divorce and has become totally dominant, then this meaning is likely to prevail, unless there is any evidence that can suggest otherwise. Last is homonym. Homonym, or called as mushtarak in Arabic, is a word that has multiple or more than one meaning. The best example of homonym, mushtarak, in Arabic is the word ain, which means several things that also include eye, water spring, spy, and gold. There also word kul that has two meanings, where the first meaning is menstruation and the second meaning is clean period between two menstruation. The Hanafi, the Hanbali, and the Zaidis have upheld the first, while the Shafi'is, Maliki, and Jafari have upheld the second meaning of kul. The example of usage of mushtarak or homonym that occur in Quranic comment is the word yad, which have a meaning of ham. In place of as for the thief, male or female, cut off their hand. Surah Al-Ma'idah, chapter 5, verse 38. The word ham in this has not been qualified in any way. Thus, the ham can mean from the tip of the finger out to the wrist, or out to the elbow, or out to the shoulder. It also can be mean that it is a left or right ham. But the ulama have agreed on the first and the last of this meaning, that is, the right hand and up to the wrist.
As conclusion, the deducing law from text can be divided into several, which are the rules of interpretations, the type of words, clear and unclear words, the general and specific, the literal and metaphorical, the absolute and qualified, and last but not least, homonyms. So from this, we can say that this topic offers us a clear and detailed analysis about the law, about deducing law from text. So for your information, this law we can find it in the Quran text and Hadith. So I think that's all from us. Thank you.